Okay, so autism, understanding the misunderstood. So I've been working in my field now for about 6 years. And I realize that a lot of people, especially, I guess, here, since it's a growing industry, um, don't have, I guess, a lot of uh, resources to kind of understand autism. So all of this information is taken from the World Health Organization website, but what I will do is incorporate my own experiences. When I first started working in the field, I was a behavior technician. I started off part time working in the home of a young boy. I think he was about 9 on the weekends, in addition to my full time job where I worked at a call center for elderly people in Dallas, Texas. So, autism is actually multiple types of disorders. So, you'll often hear people say that they're on the autism spectrum, which means that it can go from, they can, you basically, you wouldn't really be able to tell they had some type of autism to, okay, yeah, you can kind of look at them and tell. These disorders are characterized by some degree of difficulty with social interaction and communication. So, a lot of times, well, there are milestones that you're supposed to hit by certain ages. Things like being able to effectively communicate what it is that you need. If you need things like to go to the bathroom or you want a certain toy in communication, you're supposed to be able to verbalize those things by around the age of 2 or so. Um, well, 1.5, 2. Also, things like eye contact is important. I remember my grandmother telling me a story of when I was a baby. She would walk around my crib to make sure I followed her with my eyes. That's very important for children because it lets you know like what they're perceiving and what they're focusing on. Other characteristics are atypical patterns of activities and behavior, such as difficulty with transition from one activity to another, a focus on detail, and unusual reactions to sensations. So, some of the children that I've worked with, they have difficulty transitioning from one activity to another. They do not like you interrupting their activities. This can result in them becoming aggressive, throwing a tantrum, falling to the floor, um, crying, running out of the room, or eloping. They have a process in their mind that they're working through. And if you disrupt that, it disrupts everything for them. um, a focus on detail, they can become very fixated. So I have had children that are fixated on numbers. They don't want to do anything other than look at numbers all day. And I mean literal numbers. I have number cards that I use to go through like 1 through 20 with them. And I have had children, they'll take like the number 1 and just be fixated on that. And you have to kind of have them be able to refocus on what it is that you're doing. And also an unusual reaction to sensations. So they may not like the feel of something and they won't touch it. Um, I've had children, they don't like to touch kinetic sand, which is supposed to help with sensory needs. They don't like the feel of it. They don't like that it's grainy or whatever it might be. I've had children, if they spill a little bit of water on their shirt, they immediately want to change. They don't like the feel of it. And that also goes into like food and things like that. They may not like, let's say, mashed potatoes because it's mushy, and they like more crunchy items. So, so yeah, all of those things go into that. So this is just a range of emotions that you might see from a child. Uh, so for the needs of those with autism, the ability and needs of autistic people vary and can evolve over time. While some people with autism can live independently, others have severe disabilities and require lifelong care and support. So I have worked with ages, I want to say about two adults. I have seen children that we know are just going to need lifelong care. They're not hitting their milestones. We don't even see breakthroughs with their milestones. Um, and then I have worked with adults that are happily married with children and they are working. Now they do still have behavioral supports, but that's more so because maybe they won't pick up a social cue, but they're not they have the ability to go on and live what society considers a normal life. Autism often has an impact on education and employment opportunities. In addition, the demands on families providing care and support can be significant. So, where I work now at the Meridian School, it is a brand new program for them. It is a um, preschool special needs classroom, and this is the first year that they've implemented it. Thank God that I was able to come home in time to be the teacher for it. I was wondering what I was going to be able to do when I came home. Early intervention is always important. Always, always, always important. Uh, the earlier that you're able to detect these signs, the earlier that you take action to help, uh, it usually increases the chances of them being able to gain these skills and not being left behind. Um, However, we also understand that it can be very expensive. A lot of children, they need multiple therapies. So while I work in the special needs classroom, I cater to 6 children at one time. So I still have to run it like a regular classroom. I always let parents know early behavior therapy is so important. If you can put your child in, once you find out that they have autism, if you can put them in early behavior therapy for about a year or two, that helps so much. We had children in Dallas that I want to say between the ages of 2 to 4, they were just in our center for the full day and they get that one-to-one help. A lot of them require one-to-one help. They're not able to thrive in a classroom where the attention has to be divided. Uh, but again, I understand. And like I said, they usually need multiple sources of therapy. So coupling with behavior therapy, they might need occupational therapy for their sensory needs. This helps to teach them how to self-regulate. It gives them the tools of, okay, you're overstimulated. Here are some things you can do. Some of them require things like weighted blankets because they like the feel of the weight on them. We teach them things like the bear hug or just other things that they can do. Um, and then they might need speech therapy. They might have a speech delay. And just because your child has a speech delay doesn't mean that they have autism. They could just have a speech delay. Uh, so, um, like I said in the beginning, autism is a lot of things coupled together. I don't know if you all have heard of the DSM-5, but that is what psychiatrists would use to diagnose whether they have autism or not because it gives you the criteria for what they need to see from that person in order to say they have autism. Um, Societal attitudes and the level of support provided by local and national authorities are also important factors determining the quality of life of people with autism. So, what society is able to put in place to help them, just like a physical disability where they talk about wheelchair accessibility for those with wheelchairs and things like that, it's important that we have these facilities for people with autism to receive the help that they need. Um, Classrooms with much smaller sizes, the ability for them to get one-on-one help, the ability for I guess education for people to know like, hey, we need occupational therapists or we need behavioral therapists. And these programs being provided to them encouragement for people to want to share the information that they learn. Okay, autism diagnoses. Characteristics of autism may be detected in early childhood, but autism is often not diagnosed until much later. This next fact is something that we learn. They don't really tell you this as the general public, but we learn it in our program. Boys are more likely to be diagnosed with autism. Girls tend to not be diagnosed at all or diagnosed 2 to 3 years later than their boy peers due to their ability to mask their symptoms, or their symptoms are seen as normal for what society expects girls to present as. So I have a classroom of 6 children and I only have one girl. So 5 boys and one girl. A lot of times girls tend to be or are expected to be a lot more quiet. They're expected to be a lot more reserved. And that is what you tend to see with children with autism, unless they're in a, I guess, in a mood, I should say. So people kind of look at that as normal for little girls, but not little boys. So that is, like I said, just a fun fact that they give us in our program. People with autism often have co-occurring conditions, including speech delays, epilepsy, depression, anxiety, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, as well as challenging behaviors such as difficulty sleeping and self-injury. So I have worked with children that they have to take medication to go to sleep. They will not go to sleep without medication. Um, and I have definitely worked with children that have self-injurious behaviors. But again, just because you see one thing, it doesn't mean that there's autism. So I would say, a psychiatrist diagnosis is extremely important. There's a reason, people go to school in order to be able to do this. Causes of autism. Autisms are not linked to vaccines. There is no scientific evidence of that. Available scientific evidence suggests that there are probably many factors that make a child more likely to have autism, including environmental and genetic factors. So for the genetic factors, some people inherit gene variants from their parents that may increase the likelihood of developing autism. In twin studies, the estimate of genetic account, twin studies estimate that genetic accounts for 64 to 91% of autism cases. I have definitely worked with parents that have asked me why, what could have happened. I mean, there might be something in the genetic makeup that can cause that. So for environmental factors, prenatal exposures, exposure to air pollution, pesticides, toxins, or heavy metals, including pregnancy, can increase the risk of autism. Maternal health, maternal obesity, diabetes, immune system disorders, or prenatal stress can increase the risk of autism. Birth complications, premature birth, low birth weight, or birth complications that deprive the baby's brain of oxygen can increase the risk of autism. Parental age, older parental age at the time of conception can increase the risk of autism. Vitamin deficiencies can increase the risk of autism, and other factors include maternal infections like rubella, exposure to certain medications during pregnancy, maternal residency near sources of air pollution, prescription and illicit drug use during pregnancy. And these factors can interact with each other. However, we need to do more research to confirm their role in autism development. Caring for individuals with autism. Timely access to early evidence-based psychosocial interventions can improve the ability of autistic children to communicate effectively and interact socially. The monitoring of child development as part of routine maternal and child health care recommended. So like I said, early intervention, knowing the milestones that your children should hit, making sure that you look out for those. If you see that they're not hitting those milestones, taking them to go get evaluated. And if they do get an autism diagnosis, doing your best to start them in their therapies as early as possible. The healthcare needs of people with autism are complex and require a range of integrated services that include health promotion, care, and rehabilitation. So, a lot of times I'll use like brushing teeth as an example. They may not like the bristles, but obviously they have to brush their teeth. Usually, what we did with our kids that didn't like the feel of the bristles, we would kind of let them bite on it instead of brushing it across their teeth. It becomes a little, like I said, a little more complicated. They may not like the feel of something, or they might be scared of something, and it can become very aggressive, very uncooperative. So I know, and I'm hoping that hopefully we started here in the States there were dentists that were able to specifically deal with people with autism and things like that. Interventions for people with autism and other developmental disabilities need to be designed and delivered with the participation of people living with these conditions. So, making sure that they understand that they have choices. You don't make all of the choices for them. Uh, what you're trying to foster with them is the same independence as you would foster with any other child. Care needs to be accompanied by actions at community and societal levels for greater accessibility, inclusivity, and support, and should be offered as an individualistic service. So, again, not every autistic person has the same needs. Um, you want to make sure that you're catering to what they need, including them in the decisions, and ensuring that they have a strong support system. And these are just some resources in the Bahamas for individuals with autism. The government of the Bahamas Special Education Unit, the Renee O'Neill Center. I actually worked there the summer that I came home, and they connected me with the Meridian School. They do our behavior therapies for our kids. The Stapleton School, Blairwood Academy, the Meridian School, Seahorse Institute, Marjorie Davis Institute for Special Education, Excellence for Higher Learning School, the Beacon School for Exceptional Students, Reach Autism Bahamas, the Bahamas Autism Network, the Community Learning Center, Families on the Spectrum Bahamas, Caribbean Center for Child Development, the Center for Autism at Galentine's Primary School. And these are just a little bit of ways to help volunteer. If any of those places that I mentioned have the ability for you to volunteer, maybe on the weekends or during the summer or whatever, volunteer. The Bahamas is facing a critical shortage of developmental specialists and is experiencing an increase in children with disorders like autism and ADHD. And when they say that, a lot of people have said, well, how come we're seeing so much more people with autism? Well, we finally have the knowledge and the technology and the ability to diagnose them. There were many people with autism previously. We just didn't have a name for it. We didn't have the ability to diagnose it because we did not have the knowledge, the technology, all of that. It's not that people weren't having or didn't have autism. It's just that we weren't diagnosing them. But that came from pediatrician Dr. Athena Forbes Carey. So, in that, encouraging our young people to study this area. I know we love to tell people, go be a doctor, go be a nurse, go be a this, go be a that. I didn't even know about this until I went to Dallas and I lived in Dallas. And I just applied for a job, and then that's how I got in this field. So, encouraging students. I'm talking to the owner of the Renee O'Neill Center, and I told her, like, we need to get in the schools and we need to educate students about, like, hey, this is also a field that you could come into, and letting them know exactly what it entails. You don't want to have people go into it blindly, but letting them know, like, we do need behavioral therapists, we need board certified behavioral analysts. So the behavioral analyst is the person that comes up with the programs for them after they've got their diagnoses. They're not allowed to diagnose, only psychiatrists are able to do that. Or we need occupational therapists, we need speech therapists, calling for higher wages of mental health professionals, teachers, doctors, and all of those working in these fields. Research how these degrees can be used in fields that may seem useless, such as human resources, management, etc. So we don't just work, well, when we do our program, we cover all aspects of behavioral analysis, not just autism, but really just like researching what works for people and what doesn't. All people are usually reward based. Whether you think you are, whether you think you're not, you usually are. There has to be some type of reward usually. And you have to figure out what that person cares about in order to help them achieve whatever goal it is that you need them to. And also educate yourself and be open to being educated. And that is the end of my presentation.